All right, what's up, everyone? Dennis again. We're gonna break down some coaching carousel today. So I'm sure if you're tuned in at all, you saw the Calipari news to Arkansas, and yeah, can't say I saw that coming at all. I'm pretty in tune to all of that, and it seemed like it happened very, very quick, and I think that's what kind of everyone's consensus is. So yeah, I guess sort of to start off how we got here, it's crazy the dominoes you can look back at. Like, I know I've seen a couple of the dominoes memes of like Florida Gulf Coast beats Georgetown in 2013, I think. 2013 final domino is Cal to Arkansas. For those of you who don't know, Andy Enfield was the Florida Gulf Coast coach. There's Texas and Oklahoma decide to go to the SEC. Calipari leaves Arkansas because that, in a roundabout way, is what led SMU to the ACC. So, I guess to be more direct and recap the event. So what happened here, and we'll go in depth a little bit to each of them before kind of getting further into the Calipari himself news. So, SMU 2 years ago made kind of a borderline decision to hire Rob Lanier, to put it lightly. Rob Lanier is the coach at Georgia State and had done fine there. The year he got hired away, if I recall, and I'm trying to pull up SMU's team sheet right now to make sure I'm not making stuff up. Yeah, the year he got hired away, they were a 16 seed that had more talent than a 16 seed. They went 18 and 11, but they did deal with a lot of injuries. And it just kind of felt like an uninspiring hire. So it just felt just kind of weird at the time. And in year one, he went 10 and 22, terrible. But then in year two, they were 20 and 13, and they finished top 75 overall. So by all means, not really a bad effort. And the program seemed to be looking in the right direction. But as we saw with SMU basically just buying their way into the ACC, I believe they're not taking a full revenue share for their first 5 years in the conference. How they got the ACC to take them, notoriously very rich boosting and backers. They decided to fire Rob Lanier, and right away, it was pretty obvious they had a guy in mind and something was up. Because like I said, they were over 110 spots better than the previous year. They doubled their win total, more than doubled their conference win total. By all accounts, a really good season, moving in the right direction. So, unless there was a scandal in place, which there was no mention of, and I don't think there ever was, it was pretty clear they had their guy. And it was gonna be a kind of bigger name. And so that's kind of where the Enfield rumor from USC started to come in. USC obviously had a pretty disappointing year with the arrival of Bronny, which is not a super big deal. But more importantly, number one overall recruit Isaiah Collier. They had DJ Rodman from Washington State transfer in. They had 5-star Vince something last year, and kind of underwhelmed last year. And it sort of seemed like things at USC were getting a bit contentious, and so that was kind of a name that right away seemed to make some sense for a jump. And Enfield had a decently successful USC tenure. In 10 years, they made 5 tournaments, including 3 of the last 4 years, and likely would have made the tournament in 2020 as well. So it's one of those things where, with that said, though, he did only win a tournament game twice, or in 2 years. They made the Elite Eight in 21. And so it kind of made sense to move on, especially with USC in the Big Ten move, or with the imminent Big Ten move. And so Enfield kind of made the decision of, I can see the writing on the wall. I'm sort of on a short leash here. I'm going to go jump to another job where I can basically reset that time around me for how long I need to, or how quickly I need to be successful, go to a place I'm wanted, make money, and That's not the last time we're going to hear that frame of mind in this whole kind of cycle. It's a weird scenario where I don't really remember a situation like this where you have three coaches arguably taking worse jobs. So anyway, Enfield ends up going to SMU, which I think is a fine hire for SMU. I don't think Enfield's great. I think he can recruit. He shouldn't have an issue recruiting at SMU, especially if they're going to play in the ACC. There's going to be money there, clearly. So I don't know. It's not I don't love it, but it's a fine hire. I give it like a B minus, something like that. So with that domino falling, it leads to Musselman to Arkansas. And I'll be completely honest, I don't know the full story here. If him and Hunter Yurachek, the Arkansas AD, just kind of butted heads or what. But the Musselman leaving was not out of the blue. There had kind of been rumors all season that he was not super happy there and potentially could be looking to move. His name had been thrown around for Louisville. When Mick Cronin was getting kind of thrown around as leaving UCLA, his name had kind of been floated for that job. His name had been floated for a couple of jobs in general. And as we're going to get to, I don't really know what the deal was there. Like why Musselman, by all accounts, had a pretty damn good Arkansas tenure. This year notwithstanding, obviously this year was a flop. But last year's team made a Sweet 16, and that was with injuries to Trayvon Brazile and Nick Smith Jr., who were two projected starters and two projected good starters. I know a lot of the people listening to this are Creighton fans. You saw what that team was in Maui, and that wasn't even full strength. That was no Nick Smith. That was a damn good team. And you factor in, I believe it was back-to-back Elite Eights in the 2 years prior to that. So by no means had his tenure been bad or really a disappointment in any way, especially when you look at what he took over and the work he did at Nevada. I think he's a very good coach. And so for whatever reason, the marriage there had kind of gone bad, and he was looking to jump. But yeah, in his 5 years at Arkansas, he missed the tournament his first year, but then he went Elite Eight top 20 team, Elite Eight top 20 team, 22nd in a Sweet 16, and then missed the tournament this year. And that was his last 3 years at Nevada was tournament, Sweet 16, tournament. So very good coach in my opinion. But anyways, he decides to go to USC, and I think what that ultimately boils down to is him and the AD not seeing eye to eye. Obviously, Musselman's a very loud and certain instances abrasive personality, so it's not easy to see where that potentially could go bad, but it's still kind of shocking to see off the last 3 years how quickly it went bad, and that it went bad to that point where he moved across the country and went to USC. Sorry. I think on the USC portion, I think it's a great hire. He's gonna recruit there. He's gonna get guys in the portal. I don't know what a college basketball town USC is, and especially in the new Big Ten, I think it's kind of awkward. But I think he's an upgrade from Enfield, where you get better talent. He'll be a better version of Enfield. He's a better X's and O's coach than Enfield for sure, and I think he should be able to get kind of the top line portal talent. Which the Musselman move then is the domino that led us to last night, which is John Calipari shocking, I think, pretty much everyone and going to Arkansas. And so I guess I have a couple thoughts on this. First off, regarding Calipari, I think pretty clearly he's not what he once was, which, I mean, the 2015 Kentucky team is one of the best teams I've ever seen. I know they didn't win a title. The team that did win a title in 2012, 11, I'm off years. I think it's 12. Actually, let me fact check that so no one gets mad at me. But the team that beat Kansas in the title, it is 2012, sorry. 2011 was Kemba UConn. There was a 5 to 8 year stretch, and you can even go back to his time at Memphis, where I think Calipari had a pretty legitimate claim as the best coach in the country. And I don't think that's the case anymore. Now, that said, this year's team, and I don't know how vocal I've made this take. I think this year's team is kind of a little unlucky with the circumstances of it. In recent years, it's kind of become obvious, like, oh, you can't win with freshmen anymore. You can't do what Cal used to do. You can't just recruit the elite freshmen and expect to go win a title. And while that may be true, what I think everyone overlooks there is that I think Calipari, probably the most of anyone in the country, has been impacted negatively by the COVID year. And I say that because efficiency is at an all-time high right now, because that fifth year of players getting to play college basketball is a big deal. And so having 18, 19-year-olds going up against 23, 24-year-olds as opposed to 22, 23-year-olds as the upperclassmen, or even in some cases 24, 25-year-olds, like guys who are in their fifth year of playing college basketball, like that's a big deal. That's 25% more experience. And so Calipari this year had an all-time recruiting class by ranks. Now, this was a weaker class in general, but when you look at like just number one recruit, number two recruit, in that type of sense, it's one of the all-time great classes. And the team this year was fun. Like, they had offensive firepower. They showed what they could do in playing their best. They just didn't defend at all. And I've seen some of the breakdowns. I think some of that is Calipari's fault. I'm not going to act like this is like he's just he's a perfect coach who got unlucky. Like there were defensive lapses all year, and he struggled to coach that. But that being said, I think if you take this exact team and have it 2 years from now, and the COVID year isn't a thing anymore, I think there's one more year of I think next year should be the last year of the fifth year of eligibility for all the COVID players. When the oldest a player can be or the most experienced they can be is in their fourth year, I think they're better overall. So I think people haven't really talked about that at all. Yes, his strategy is not as successful as it once was, and I do think there's something to that. But a big reason for that is because of a rule change that is going to be done in another year. So I caution people, and I say this as someone who's not a huge Calipari supporter, and again, I want to be abundantly clear, I don't think he's a great X's and O's coach. I think he needs assistant coaches around him to help in that regard. But this year's team was fun. It was better than his previous teams. And I think this year's team kind of could have had the potential of, if you remember the 2015 team, the 2014 team was basically the entirely the same team, and they all just ran it back. I think if a majority of this team ran it back next year, and I don't know how much of them would have portaled, would have went to the draft, whatever. I think if this team would have ran it back and maybe got a guy or two out of the portal, it could have been a really damn good team. So I think I'm still kind of higher on Calipari than the consensus. That being said, I think it's very clear the relationship had soured to a point where it was going to be very hard to salvage. Now, again, if they go out next year and win a title, it's all good, but that's extremely hard to do. So I kind of look at this as a win-win-win for all involved. I think for Arkansas, you get an elite recruiter, you get a name, and clearly with the financial commitment they've shown, I think I saw somewhere that it's like Calipari gets like $8 million in salary, and Arkansas, it might be like $8 million in salary, $2 million assistant pool, and like $5 million in NIL. Like that's an elite pool to work with in college basketball. And clearly there's buy-in to make this move. This is a home run swing that you hit out of the park. Like the fact that you got this, it tells me behind the scenes there is real high level commitment. And I think Calipari, with that commitment, with a fan base that will get behind him, it is very funny. And I do credit Arkansas fans a little bit for being self-aware, and I kind of think they have to be, with how they've said Calipari sucks the last 5 years, and now it's like, oh, now he's our guy, great coach, home run hire. little funny, but I tend to agree with it. And again, as I've said, I don't think he's a perfect coach by any means, but I do kind of think some of the criticism put on him is unfair. And his philosophy on roster construction has probably suffered the most because of the COVID year. And now you can say you should have pivoted to use the portal more, maybe, but I do think that's a fair point. So from his side, it's a lot like the Andy Enfield situation where it might be a marginally worse job, but if Calipari didn't make an Elite Eight next year, he was probably gone, depending on how the rest of the regular season went. And maybe not even. Maybe if they have a Purdue season of 2 years ago and they go like 33-5, or I guess that'd be 2 games, 28-5 and lose in the first round somehow, like I think he probably still would have been gone. Like I think he probably needed an Elite Eights with a good 25-win regular season to stay. Because it's clear a lot of that fan base did turn on him. And so in going to Arkansas now, he gets somewhere where he's going to be welcome. There's going to be tremendous financial commitment. And I think it makes a lot of sense from his perspective. Now from the Kentucky perspective, I think it's a lot of the same things I said for Calipari. Like it's probably best for all involved. It's clear the relationship had soured, and you're Kentucky basketball. You can get almost any name you want. Now, the almost is key here because, and we'll get into this, of who I think they're going to go after and what's going to happen. I think the ability to reset and the fan base and donors are going to be reinvigorated. They're going to want to tell Cal to fuck himself, and they are going to drum up this money. I think there have been people drumming up money behind the scenes in case they needed it for the buyout, which that's the other thing. They pay Cal nothing. Cal leaving on his own accord, he owes $0. Kentucky owes $0. Like, for all the Kentucky fans who wanted him gone, the hurdle was always like, oh, his buyout. Like, you didn't pay any of that buyout. So a lot of you got exactly what you wanted. You're Kentucky basketball. You're going to get a name. I will say, I don't know how SEC scheduling works because it's obviously not full double round robin. I don't know if Kentucky-Arkansas is a protected game. I doubt it is. But, I mean, even if you got to do some shit behind the scenes, you have to have Arkansas-Kentucky home and home next year. Like that, the Arkansas game in Lexington, there's going to need to be 500 security guards. It's going to be insane. And I would give a lot to go to that game, but I'd imagine tickets are going to be about $5,000. So that's going to be appointment TV. That's going to dwarf what Providence was with Cooley. That's going to dwarf Beard to Texas Tech. It's going to be pretty incredible. So yeah, I guess getting into kind of the Kentucky side of things and who I think they'll go for. So I've heard Oates is out. One side doesn't want the other. I think Oates. It sort of seems like Oates isn't huge on going there. Has the big buyout, and he's not Kentucky's top choice. So I think if you're Kentucky, so I've heard Danny Hurley is kind of the home run swing, and I think it makes a lot of sense. If you back-to-back championship games, regardless of if they win or lose tonight. This is being recorded Monday afternoon. It's tough to turn that down. That's a big name. I do sort of wonder how the personalities would work. Like, I think he's so loved at UConn right now, and Kentucky has shown, like, they will, like, they're going to turn. They're crazy sports fans. Who isn't? Like, you know, if Hurley starts out next year and, like, drops to 0-2 in the SEC, just hypothetically, it somehow happens. I think that fan base would turn on him quick, and I don't really know if he's built for that. I don't really get the fit, and I don't think he'd go regardless, but I don't really get the fit. And plus, he's Northeast guy. He's Wagner, Rhode Island, UConn. He's kind of been there his whole career. So then, again, this kind of assumes Oates is out. I've heard the first call Kentucky's going to make is Scott Drew. And I've seen a lot of Kentucky fans not wanting that. And my question is, like, why? Like, what has Scott Drew done that's not good enough for you? I know the last 2 years haven't been, like, great. I fully am aware of that. 2-3 seeds, lost in the round of 32 both times. Not his best teams by any account, but, like, do you realize what a hard fucking job Baylor is? Like, the fact that he's doing that there is ridiculous. Like, when he got the Baylor job, and I know this goes way back and doesn't matter as much, but, like, Baylor's last coach had been fired for covering up the murder of a teammate or something like that. I don't know. It was not a good situation. That's probably oversimplifying it. There were drugs involved. Bad situation. But, like, Scott Drew's last 5 years at Baylor have been 2020 third-ranked team, projected number 1 seed. 2021 second-ranked team overall, champion, 1 seed. They went 28-2. I firmly believe if that team doesn't get COVID, they run the table. Like, I think COVID doesn't exist. I think that team's thought it was one of the greatest teams of all time. 2022, 4th overall, number 1 seed, lost in the second round to the UNC team that then made the title game. 2023, 16th overall, 3rd seed, lost in round 2 to a Creighton team where, funny enough, Creighton was favored in that game, so kind of an underseeded 6. And then this year, 3 seed, 15th overall, lost to 6 seed Clemson, who then made the Elite Eight, which, not a great loss, but whatever. My point is, in his last 5 years at Baylor, Scott Drew has 3 top 10 finishes. He's made a Final Four. He's won a championship. Like, what do you want? Like, that's a tough job. Like, you're fucking Kentucky. Scott Drew is elite X's and O's. He's done a great job recruiting at fucking Baylor to get people to Waco, Texas. You think he's going to have any trouble recruiting to Lexington? Like, absolutely not. Like, if you're a Kentucky fan, Kentucky hires Scott Drew and you're disappointed, like, shut the fuck up. You do not know anything. Like, Scott Drew is a top 5 coach, I think, minimum. Like, it's maybe Hurley. I still want to see Hurley lose some of his assistants, but probably Hurley. You could, like, I would probably put why am I blanking on names? It's Self Hurley. I mean, you can probably put Patino up there still, but then again, getting old. Like, Painter probably belongs near there. I think I'm missing an obvious name, but whatever. He's a top 5 coach to me. I think that's a great hire. I think he would kill it there. Now, Scott Drew doesn't want it. I don't know what you do. Assuming you can't get Hurley either. I don't know your next option. I know Billy Donovan has reported interest. It sort of seemed like he's kind of wanting to come back to college. That would be a hire I do not get at all. He's been out of the college game for over a decade at this point. He has no knowledge of the portal. Like, hasn't done that at all. Hasn't recruited in forever. He's done a good, not great job in the NBA. He's been fine. I know if he leaves, I know Bulls fans aren't going to be crying over it. But, like, you're Kentucky. Why do you want a guy who has no knowledge of the transfer portal and is 10 years removed from his last college basketball game? That makes no sense to me. And it might work fine. Like, there's absolutely a world where Donovan gets there, rejuvenated, hits the ground running, and, you know, away you go. But for, like, if you want to get the argument of, like, oh, Scott Drew hasn't been that great without Tang the last 2 years at Baylor, like, the end of Billy Donovan's career wasn't great. Like, so he won back-to-back titles, and then 2015 back onwards. So his last year they went 16-17, missed the tournament. 3rd overall, Final Four. 2nd overall, made an Elite Eight. A 7 seed, made the Elite Eight. 2nd, made the Elite Eight. Like, round 1. Like, his analytical rankings: 34, 3, 2, 10, 17, 50. Like, and that those previous 2 years he missed the tournament. Like, that's very good, but, like, it's not like when he left. Like, it's not like he was Jay Wright when he left, where he was still, like, pretty fresh off a title. I don't know. Billy Donovan would not be my first choice. And speaking of Jay Wright, I know there is some talk around him. I can't see him coming back. I think he's happy doing TV. he doesn't feel like a Kentucky guy to me. I can't see it. So, other candidates, Bruce Pearl, I don't know, fine. I think your plan A is Hurley, knowing it probably fails. And if it does, you don't let Scott Drew get away. So that's what I'm looking at if you're Kentucky. If Scott Drew did leave, it gets kind of interesting then on the domino of does Tang go back to Baylor? I know he just signed an extension. But that would be funny. It's been a hell of an offseason for K-State. Worried about losing Tang to Louisville, then to Arkansas. Now it'd be something if somehow he ends up at Baylor again. So I don't know. I guess to grade the hires, I think Enfield to SMU, which kind of set this whole thing off, is a B-. I think Musselman to USC is an A-. I think Calipari to Arkansas is an A+. I think he's going to do really well there. I think he's kind of going to be rejuvenated, pissed off. He's going to have connections. He's going to have the funding. I think it's going to be really good. And Kentucky, I'd give Scott Drew an A+. I'd give Danny Hurley. That's a great question. Would you rather have Scott Drew or Danny Hurley? I think I would rather take Scott Drew. And I don't know. Again, if you want to ding Scott Drew and say like, oh, since Tang left, the defense hasn't been good. I hear that, but Hurley also hasn't lost any of his assistants. Like those guys are going to start getting head coaching jobs, and so it's not necessarily like a knock on Hurley specifically. It's a knock on anyone who has success like that. Like it's a coaching staff for a reason. Let's see what they are as they lose their staff. And I think UConn, frankly, is much easier to win than Baylor. I think what Drew's done up until the back-to-back titles will trump a lot. But I think what Drew's done is much, much more similar to the run Hurley's had so far than people would really acknowledge. So I'd give Drew an A+. I'd give Hurley an A. I don't think Oates is interested, but on the off chance that he is, I don't know, B+, A-. And everyone else just sort of feels underwhelming to me. Like Brad Underwood thrown around, like fine. I don't really think he's a fit. Shaka I think would be terrible. Rick Pitino would be fun, but I can't see him doing it just because they're going to. Then you're just back here in 4 years. He doesn't have many years left. I will say the one fun name that they're absolutely not going to do, but I think they should, is Will Wade. I'm a noted huge Will Wade guy, but Will Wade can fucking recruit. And I know they're not going to touch him because of the scandal and because he paid guys, which, yeah, I'm sure Kentucky never paid guys either before NIL. And he does have 1 year of the show cause left. Like, Will Wade is fucking Kentucky. Like, you put money behind that guy, the fan base will embrace him. He will be a villain. He will be charismatic. That would be fucking awesome. I love Will Wade. I would be a Kentucky fan. Like, that would be fucking awesome. And if Kentucky will ever get off their fucking soapbox and just say, like, you know what, like, we're going to lean into it. We're going to hire Will Wade. Again, you don't think Calipari was paying players? Like, when Will Wade just got caught doing it. Like, you don't think Calipari was doing it? That would be awesome. That would, honestly, if you can't get Hurley or Drew, I think Will Wade would be my third choice. And again, I don't think they're going to do it. But it would be a lot of fun. So I guess that's kind of that's kind of all I got right now. Maybe we'll update this when we do see who Kentucky hires. But I think it's really interesting kind of how this worked out, where you have debatably 3 coaches that all took a worse job. And I kind of don't hate it for any of them. It's pretty interesting to see. So I guess, yeah, we'll see how it works out. And thanks for listening, and let me know if you got questions.